Thank you, Debbie, and this Alliance of Wonderful Patriots. This is a really, really big honor for me. So I'm used to people trying to cancel me, not welcome me. So this is refreshing. So a little bit about who I am. I'm just a mom, scorching earth in defense of my children, in defense of our constitutional rights and protections and this country. I call what we're seeing right now a war on children. There are a lot of other battles happening in what is a spiritual, moral war, but the most vulnerable among us, it's not each other, it's not our generation, it's the youngest generation right now in our midst. So it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of, the sky is falling and the country's in crisis and the world is in crisis. But what Awake Illinois, which started in Naperville, and there's some Naperville faces I see here, what started was this movement to get regular people to not just be terrified all the time, but to have some really good resources to advocate for their families and for their communities. And it's been really, really transformative. And you're seeing across the country this movement of regular people saying, it's not going to be the big guy in the White House who saves me. It's not going to be my state government that saves me. And even though we're going to talk about local elections and local government, which is the majority of your tax dollars, they're not going to save you either. So I ask people in this war on children, who's the greatest enemy, or what is the greatest enemy to you? Show of hands and I'll call on you so we can hear it. Over here I heard something, yes?
Television.
Television, okay. The mainstream media. Social media. Post, click, like, block, delete. Pornography, that's very good. It destroys the mind, destroys relationships, destroys society. Indoctrination. School curriculum. Mark?
Did you see our government?
Government. A lot of corruption in government, no question. So I would agree with all of that. Well, yeah.
I don't think parents don't stand up.
Parents that don't stand up. He gets 4 gold stars. Give him a round of applause. So you're touching on why we're here right now. Our greatest threat is our own apathy. It is hearing that there's a war on children, but cowering in our burrows and not doing anything. It's a war on children and knowing it, but saying, I really want to get invited to the poker club, so I'm not going to talk about this bullshit that's happening in our schools. So apathy is our greatest enemy. Sorry, I sometimes swear. Apathy is our greatest enemy. And I have to tell you, the fact that you're here right now and we are in a meeting that started with prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, there are soy lattes of the haters that are boiling with, just visceral disgust because we're here together talking and being a community. So this is actually already kind of a victory in and of itself. So keep meeting and keep talking. So apathy is our greatest enemy. And so what I hope you do after we talk is that next time you're in a group setting, I wouldn't say wait until Christmas. Don't do that. Don't ruin Christmas with the opener of, do you know there's a war on children? What are we going to do about it? But when you're in a conversation with people, maybe they're talking about what happened in the midterms, maybe they are already talking about the local elections. Does anybody know when the local elections are, what the date is? Yes?
April 4th.
April 4th. 4 gold stars. 4-4-2-3. It's the easiest date to remember. And I'm going to get into how you can talk to people about that date. But what I want you to do when you leave here is be able to have a conversation with people about what is happening in the war on children. And some people here, how many of you think you're really well read? Wow, that was an amazing catch. That was an amazing catch. That was ninja. The wine caught. Divine intervention. So, how many of you here are very well read? You read high essays, maybe Dr. James Lindsay, who's an expert on Marxism, maybe Hillsdale and Primus, okay, any number of, I don't know, Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone, okay. So, how many of you would ever go agenda is out to get you and your family, Mark would do it. Mark would do it. Okay, here's what we've learned in 2 years of full-time advocacy. The mushy middle is where the meat is. That's where you're going to get people out to vote who haven't typically been voting. That's where you're going to get people to talk about conversations. I won't say you dumb it down, but I will say you have to really handhold people into advocacy. So I'm going to give you some kind of entry-level conversations to have, because I say to people all the time, if you're here, you've already entered the movie theater and you've started the movie. But we have to assume most people don't even know there's a movie to watch, and they don't know how to get to the movie theater. So you guys are ahead of the curve, and we sometimes have a problem, maybe you're like me, it's an obsession, where you think about it all day, every day, and you get up the next day and you do it again and again and again. There are some people who don't have the bandwidth, they're stressed. It's a stressful time right now. They're raising children, they're paying bills. Maybe they are finding time for joy, and that's important. You don't want to crush their joy. But what we need to do is make sure that people have the bandwidth to buy in to what we're here doing, which is fighting for our country and defending children in this war. So how many of you are familiar with the National Sex Education Standards? Show your hands higher if you said yes. Okay. All right, so maybe some of you are familiar, but you were afraid if you raised your hand that I would call on you and you would feel vulnerable to the question. But here's the thing. Hold on. No, that's okay, thank you. If there's any one issue that you can talk to people about that is specific to your community and to the state of Illinois, it's the National Sex Education Standards. Most of us know that there is a learning gap. We saw the curtain get pulled back in 2020. We saw the Zoom school. We saw the teacher unions push the school closures. We saw the kids fall more and more behind. But what Ted Dabrowski at Wider Points has done a really good job of, and all of our chapters and candidates, school board candidates, are using his data, is he goes back to 2019, before the lockdowns, and shows just how far behind in crisis our children are academically. So in 2019, in our school district, Indian Prairie 204 is the fourth largest in the state. We have 11,000 students not reading at grade level in 2019. 26,000 students, and 11,000 are not reading at grade level. What is that doing to their future prospects? What did it do when we shut them out of school? And what is it doing now that we are infiltrating the curriculum with activist sex education, where Planned Parenthood is on the advisory board? A group called SECUS develops the lessons and advocates for youth. So this is building a picture. But what we have to have the conversation about is how Illinois is the only state in the country adopting the National Sex Education Standards Second Edition. We're winning and losing again. It was passed into legislature, signed by Pritzker in August of 2021. It's here. But here's the thing, they've endorsed the lessons that teachers could be using regardless of what your school district says. It just takes one teacher to leverage any resource that could be considered in your mind to be indoctrination. So that's why I'm going to give you some resources to share with people so that it's not just the sky is falling, it is, oh, I'm empowered to be the barrier for my child. So school districts make the decision if they will adopt the standards. I'm going to say it again. It just takes one teacher to adopt the standards for her students or his students. Do you see what I'm getting at here? It's twofold. Your school board matters, but the parental involvement and the feedback from the community matters, I think, even more. So my daughter, I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, 8th grade and 6th grade boys, and our daughter's 7. We started a brand new school in our community, chartered by parents through Pastor Randy Bland's Grace Association. This is a year after I ran for school board and was called a white supremacist for saying we shouldn't race hustle with culturally responsive teaching, CRT, in the classroom. That was when I learned we were up against a machine. So, la lengua primera de mi padre es español. I'm half Hispanic. Should it matter? I'm an American. But I saw then that the indoctrination was starting as a school board candidate, and the teacher union back slate won. So that propelled me into accidental activism. And once the national sex ed standards were passed, I said, nope, not my daughter. And I could have stopped there, and I could have pulled the plug on Awake, Illinois after my husband's company's been emailed and harassed. Do you know what your wife does? Yeah, she's transphobic. She's a white supremacist. His whole entire company, top to bottom staff. Fortunately, they're awake, but not everybody's so lucky. But I could have closed it up and said, I'm going to insulate, forget it, y'all are on your own. But I'm here tonight. My mother-in-law took my daughter to ballet, my boys are home, my husband's out of town, at the company, he saw the emails at his company meeting. So, I want you to understand it means something to me for you to be able to do what many of us are doing out here. And it's thankless work. But with every slight conversation, good things can happen. Because if one parent wakes up, that's a child that's waking up. That's, you follow my drift. So this is the second grade lesson. And if you go to the State Board of Education of Illinois, it takes you to comprehensive sex education, to the national sex ed standards. This is one lesson, and I'll read it to you. Second grade is 7-year-olds. And this is a lesson, I have a binder of 300 pages of all the lessons K through 12. But I just want you to hear what understanding our bodies, the materials needed for the teacher. Teacher's resource, body parts and functions, anatomy PowerPoint, laptop or desktop with PowerPoint on it, 6 post-it notes or signs labeled, one each, with vulva, clitoris, urethra, vagina, anus, and nipples. 6 post-it notes, signs labeled, one each, with penis, urethra, scrotum, testicles, anus, and nipples. LCD projector and screen. It has them do this in a group, and they grab each of the 6 notes, and they talk about where it goes on a cartoon body, naked body, of an animated cartoon. You can put it down. There's one more poster there with a little kid. You can grab that one. So, we got more than half of the school districts in the state to opt out. We did a whole campaign over the summer. A lot of parents groups did across the state. We got half to opt out. And I genuinely think they were waiting to see what happened with the midterms. Is the governor who signed the bill going to still be in there? Well, he is. What's going to happen if we just kick the can down until April 4th? Some are still holding out. Some are talking about it tonight. I had a school board member call me. The school board members colluded. They didn't want her to get the discussion on the agenda. They just wanted to breeze it on through. And she put her foot down and she's asking really good questions. And my hope and prayer is that she asks enough good questions that the community wakes up. But the sex ed standards sound accredited, don't they? It sounds like maybe what you think your kids had, Robert Crown. They go into 5th grade and they split into 2 different groups, boys here, girls there. Robert Crown is now adopting these national sex ed standards. It's not health class. It's not health class. It's indoctrination, and it's actually worse. It's sexualizing children from kindergarten. So the national sex ed standards were created by activists who, quote, work to create a world that ensures social justice is inclusive of sexual and reproductive rights. That's Planned Parenthood. That's an agenda in your child's K through 12 curricula. And this is a 7-year-old holding up a post-it that says clitoris. So this is in legislation. And I think that this is a very easy way to get the conversation going when you talk about your concerns about the falling academics and say now Illinois is the only state in the country adding in lessons where 7-year-olds are talking about post-it notes with clitoris, anus, and nipples. Are we going in the right direction?
No.
I'm voting for school board members who are pro-child, pro-parent, and against this garbage in the classroom. So that's what you're championing when you talk about the importance of school board. But here's the other thing to know. So my boys are in 6th grade and 8th grade. And they were redistricted to a different middle school. So they started this year, the school was brand new, the principal was new, everybody was new. And I submitted 2 opt-out forms, and we have them at awakeil.com/opt-out. And it says, I do not want my children in CECUS lessons, comprehensive sex ed, discussions on mental health, etc. They've been very respectful. Perhaps my reputation precedes me. Perhaps the principal is the mother herself and she gets it. But by law, when that gets submitted, they have to acknowledge, per law, your parental rights and expectations that they opt out. We have 2 on file. Unfortunately, a substitute teacher came into science class who's trained to be a counselor, school counselor. School counselors are a big part of the indoctrination. And guess what? They got one-on-one access to your child. It was a 1-hour talk that happened to be recorded by a student who shall not be named because the spidey sense went off. And they went home and said, Mom, listen to what this counselor was talking to me about. It was a 1-hour conversation on worry, self-regulation. Who can you trust? Who would you trust? If you have something wrong, who do you trust? Who is your person? The only person in that classroom after 1 hour that said a parent was a student. And when they suggested their parent, the counselor said, well, if you're lucky enough to have a parent that's trusted. So, conversation with the principal. She was very, very disappointed that this happened. This was a one-off. But I am one parent with 1 child. How many more are not awake? So these conversations are important because if you are not the barrier between this indoctrination and your child, who's going to be sitting with you at Christmas 10, 15, 20 years from now when this is starting in kindergarten with discussions on gender ideology? And then up to high school, STD bingo, where one of the bingo squares is unprotected anal sex. These are the national sex ed standards signed into law by your governor. Fully backed by the Democrats, single party support. Elections matter. That one's done, it's over. Next one is school board. But again, these people cannot save you. You have to save your children, you have to save your grandchildren. So, open up a conversation with, are you familiar with the national sex ed standards? Let me hear you all, just do 30 seconds. Turn to your neighbor or somebody you came with. Have you heard about the national sex ed standards here in Illinois? Just do it. Just go ahead and just outright, just say it to a neighbor. I'm sorry for the person who just walked into the room and was asked that question with 0 context. But that's the goal, right? These conversations have to happen and it's uncomfortable. But through that, it is going to be transformative. We have to normalize the conversation in order to fight the war on children. So for anybody here who has school-aged children, submit the opt-out form now. Now. I'm going to get to the grandparents. You guys have a lot of work to do. Sorry, you've already raised your kids, but we need your help. So the opt-out form is key. Share it, talk to your friends and neighbors about it. Normalize the fact that this is not normal. There is no reason that my child should be the only one opted out of these discussions. It should be 25 of the 35 kids, and we'll work on the other 10. But we should be the biggest thorn in the indoctrinator, Maoist camp organizer sides as possible. We can't bury our heads in the sand anymore. Because what will happen to this 7-year-old? What will happen to this 7-year-old when she's 27? Will she still have her breasts? Or will Planned Parenthood have put her on puberty blockers and said, you're so confused, you need to be a boy? Okay? We can stop it, but we can't succumb to what? Fear, apathy. We're awake, yes? Okay, good.
Oh, we're not woke.
We're not woke. So for the grandparents, and this is a question, somebody's at the front door. Ring. So for the grandparents, you are actually more conservative and patriotic than the generation you raised. And that's not to say that your children don't believe in what you raised them to believe, but they're not going to get invited to the poker club or to the golf outing if they're not woke. Some people are comfortable being outliers and saying, screw it, I don't need friends. The majority of the human psyche is going to want friends. The daughter wants to be invited to the wine night or to the Bible group where they don't want to talk about this. And I'm not condoning that. I'm an outlier. I always have been. But that's not everybody. Not everybody has the courage. It's way easier for a grandparent, actually, to speak to a school board because y'all are paying taxes and you don't care about your employer. You don't care about being canceled. Letter to the editors. Grandparents, write to every local paper, Daily Herald, The Patch, Chicago Tribune, and Sun-Times. When they start hearing that the grandparents aren't woke, you guys are the ones with the money in this country. Your pocketbook matters. So don't underestimate the value of the dollars you have in the bank. And speaking of dollars, this is a little bit on the nose, but how many of you have grandchildren and you expect to pass on money to them or an estate? Your grandchildren are very lucky. The trend right now for awakened families is grandparents are saying to their children, I am helping you with childcare. I am helping you with this. I pay for the vations. I sure as hell am not going to have my grandkids grow up to hate themselves and this country. Put them in private school and I'll pay for it. What's better, that you wait for them to go to Disney and see a bunch of drag queens 20 years from now? Or that they get a quality education where they're not indoctrinated, they love themselves, they love their parents, they love you, and they love their country? Just think about it. It's just a suggestion. I'm just telling you to give a lot of your money away right now, earlier than you thought you would. Grace Association is probably one of the best alternative education options in the state. My daughter is at one of the schools. The full armor is over these kids. And when I read with them, it's hard not to get emotional, so excuse me, I don't mean to make it awkward. But to do this kind of work, you gotta have hustle and a whole lot of heart. So when I sit with these kids and I'm reading with them, many of them are actually Eastern European, because they sniff this shit out and they're like, oh hell no. I ran away from communism. You will not make my child into a communist. A lot of Eastern Europeans, and so English is their second language, but I'll be sitting there with them and they'll be coughing at me. Kids cough, they're just sneezing like crazy. And I think back to when schools closed and we told these children that they have to sacrifice everything. Because heaven forbid they should be learning to read and coughing and we're saying you're gonna kill society. But we can sit with these children and give them freedom to learn and to cough and to praise God and to love their country. Consider Grace Association, grandparents. Consider it. And there's a gentleman in the room who can actually speak to a location that's probably going to open, ideally, hopefully, prayerfully, this August for this area, in the Elgin area. They will need teachers, they will need substitutes, and they will have the children, because when you build it, they come. So, Mr. Dean will be your go-to man to learn more about that. I can speak to the Naperville location. But when people say, you're out to destroy public schools, the majority of our schools of this country are going to be in public schools. I'm not naive to that. I have 2 boys in the schools myself. So Dr. James Lindsay always says, we're not here to destroy public schools. We're here to reform them. And the first way you do that is you talk to your community about the struggles and you support the candidates that are going to strengthen and reform and rebuild your public schools. And you get out the vote. In Naperville, DuPage, half of our registered Republicans who tend to defer to integrity in education versus activism, the ones who vote in the midterms, only half vote in the local. That's fascinating. And I think some people maybe wrongfully assume that their legislators are going to have a big say in what happens with the tax dollars in the education. They passed this national sex ed standards, the Democrats did. But your local school boards are going to be the most important vote that you cast in this upcoming election. And that's what you need to tell people. Are we awake? Yes. Very good. Do you feel equipped to have a conversation with somebody and to empower them to be the barrier between their child and woke indoctrination? Yes.